You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Judge demands Trump surrender his financial records, based on an article by Nick Hilden. When Trump sued the BBC, he lit up his own books. The court saw the larger game. A federal magistrate judge ruled that Donald Trump has to hand over detailed financial documents tied to his defamation suit against the BBC. The immediate issue was whether his business losses were still part of the case. The deeper issue was simpler. Trump tried to use the courts to police his image, and the court treated that move as an opening to inspect the business empire he put on the line. The complaint became the evidence. Trump's lawyers tried to narrow the case after the fact, backing away from claims that the BBC documentary caused economic harm to his companies. They said the case was now only about reputation, not business value, but the judge refused to let them rewrite the complaint after using his brands, properties, and companies as the basis for damages. That is the part worth noticing. Trump did not stumble into scrutiny. He invited it by making his business identity central to the lawsuit. The press is not the target, it's the trigger. Politico frames this as a reminder that Trump's media lawsuits can backfire. That is true, but too polite. These suits are not serious attempts to vindicate truth. They are instruments of intimidation, spectacle, and narrative control. Trump contends the BBC edited his Jan. 6 speech to make it sound like he called for violence. That claim may matter in court. What matters politically is the pattern. When Trump is challenged on what he said and what he did, he reaches for litigation as a weapon, then complains when the process exposes him. Power moves both ways. The actual institutional power in this story sits with the court, and with the media outlet Trump tried to bully. The judge said she lacked the power to excise the business element from the complaint. That detail matters, because it shows how Trump's preferred tactic depends on controlling the frame more than the facts. Once the complaint was filed broadly enough to put his companies at issue, the BBC gained leverage to dig into more than 400 companies owned by a Trump family trust. Trump wanted the prestige of being the plaintiff, and the insulation of being treated as a victim. Instead, he gave his opponent a legal path into his finances. Damage control after overreach. This is not an isolated setback. The source notes other recent losses: a censured filing deadline in the BBC case, a groundless suit against the Wall Street Journal, a meritless suit against CNN, and other legal embarrassments involving his J6 fund, AI-generated fake citations, and contradictory evidence in another case. The pattern is consistent. Trump's legal machine keeps producing sloppy, performative aggression, then tries to retreat once the consequences become concrete. That is not a law and order posture. It is institutional vandalism dressed up as grievance. The real story is accountability. The political meaning here is not that Trump had a bad week in court. It is that authoritarian politics often hides behind the language of injury, defamation, and respectability, while using institutions to punish criticism and launder power. Trump turns lawsuits into propaganda. He uses the formal authority of the courts to relitigate his public image, then treats discovery and judicial resistance as persecution. The BBC story exposes that tactic in miniature. When powerful men weaponize the legal system to control the record, they sometimes end up handing over the record they most wanted buried. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to AlterNet for today's article. With the automated voice of Lesak, thanks for listening.